This video will be about writing all chromatic intervals, all 12 intervals. So we've talked about how to find specific intervals to help us writing key signatures and identifying tonic and dominant. We're going to start with treble clef, and we're just going to go from E to E. All right, so if you count with me, if you start on E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then when you reach E again, that's 13. So the way this is going to work is from here to here is the first interval. So you can say this is 1. So this is like calling E 0. And then once you start counting from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now the next E is 12 if we start on 0. And that's how we're going to get 12 intervals. So we don't see this very often, but you can write the same note twice. It kind of looks like googly eyes, right? And that's what we actually call unison. It's the same note, 1, together. So then we need 12 more E's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hopefully I've left myself enough room to write everything I need to. So here we start with googly eyes. This is our unison. And then we just like we did before when we wrote up the steps of the scale, but now we've got to include every single black key as well. So E to F is obviously a second. But then we have another possibility. We have E to F sharp. So I'm using a different color to make that clear. And then it gets a little bit easier with the room because I don't have to write next. Notice this is often a pitfall when you see, okay, these are right next to one another, so that must just be 1 apart. But if you think to yourself, how would I play this? I would play this using 2 different fingers. So that's how you're going to remember that it's 2. This is also a 2. And then we bump it up another step, and we're going to get a third. But then there's another possibility for a G. Right, here's F, here's F sharp, here's G, here's G sharp. So the distance is the same, the number is going to be the same, but we're going to call them different things. So let's stop here and talk about how we're going to differentiate the 2 different 2s and the 2 different 3s. So I said from E is 0 to this 1 is our first half step, and we're going to call that a minor second. Then we're still on 0, we're still on E, but we're going to go to a different F. We're going to go to F sharp, and so we call that a major second. It's a bigger second. So you may have learned that 1 half step You can count half steps at one, you have 1 half step, and 2 half steps is a whole step. The other way you can think about it, 1 half step is a minor second. As soon as you have 2 half steps, you change it to a major second. Similarly, when I go to the next note, I have a third because it's spelled E to G, but it's a minor third. And I raise this note by 1 half step, so this also becomes a major third. Now, the other thing you can realize is if you write the scale E, and you know it has F sharp and G sharp, that's another way you can remember what your major intervals are. E, F sharp, G sharp, and so on up the scale. We're going to get to those. So this note is in the major scale, this note is in the major scale. So then you can remember those intervals starting from E are going to be major. So the small m is minor, the capital M is major. Let's keep going. Our next note up from G sharp is A. And then I'll keep using sharps because I was using sharps here. We have another A possibility. And that's A sharp. Now, unlike these options here, these intervals are called something different. For the fourth, right, and remember this note is also in the scale. Once you get to the fourth, we just call it a perfect fourth. Here's our P. And then I'm going to skip over this A sharp for a minute, and I'm going to go to the next note in our scale. Right after A sharp, we come to B, and this is another perfect interval. If you know it matches the major scale, and for that matter, it also matches the minor scale, you know those intervals are perfect. This one right here is really an exception. We're going to call it, before we get to different types of names for this interval, we're going to call it a tritone. If you look at the keyboard with me, we're starting on E, we're going up 1 whole step, 2 whole steps, 3 whole steps, we get to that A sharp. That's our 3 tones. Tritone is where we get that term. Just hold on for it for a little while. I'm going to finish our scale here, our chromatic scale. After B, we come to C, and then we have another C, which is going to be C sharp. And then we have D, and another possible D, which is D sharp. Let's see, I've run out of room with my perfect. I'm going to change it, move it down. And then we can finish our scale. We finally arrived at our octave, which we're also going to call a perfect interval. P is for perfect. Now I've jumped over these 4, but they follow this pattern exactly. So you can see this is a 5th. This is going to be a 6th. This is also a 6th, but it's going to be a different type. And then if you count the steps here, you get a 7th. This is still a 7th, but it's going to be a different type. and you'll see this matches exactly. Minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh, and just like we were talking about here, if you keep writing the scale, the major intervals have the sharps, right? So this interval from E to C sharp is major because it matches the major scale. The D sharp interval, E to D sharp, is a major seventh because it matches the notes of the scale. Okay? Doesn't mean we're not going to come across these in other instances, but this is your whole pattern of intervals. I know it's a lot of information right off the bat, but this is just your first introduction to writing all of the notes of the chromatic scale. Okay, all for now.